Welcome to a channel where every story dives deep into betrayal, hidden power, and shocking truths that nobody else will tell. Here, loyalty isn't always rewarded, and unseen brilliance can topple the powerful. From boardroom betrayals to personal secrets hidden in plain sight, every tale exposes raw emotions, secret rivalries, and the twists of fortune that change everything in an instant. Witness what happens when humiliation becomes a launchpad for triumph, when overlooked forces reclaim what's rightfully theirs, and when deceptions unravel to reveal shocking truths about the people closest to you. These aren't just stories, they're real-life dramas that show how cunning, patience, and insight turn betrayal into vindication. Whether it's family, love, or business, every episode delivers suspense, emotion, and jaw-dropping revelations that keep you on the edge of your seat. The announcement came like a thunderclap in a room already charged with ambition and whispered promises. Years of sleepless nights, painstaking deals, and delicate negotiations evaporated in a single, cold dismissal. Every sleepless night spent chasing investors, every late-night call with potential backers, every carefully crafted pitch that secured the $10 million the startup had been clinging to, all of it seemed invisible now. Loyalty, once celebrated as a virtue, was treated as an inconvenient burden. The polished facade of the startup, gleaming offices, friendly team chatter, and the charisma of a CEO who once smiled at victories as if they were shared, cracked, revealing a hollow, ruthless core. Whispers in the hallways hinted at a carefully orchestrated deception, a plan that had been in motion long before the funding announcement. Every colleague who once nodded in agreement, every board member who had applauded contributions, seemed complicit in a quiet erasure. Behind closed doors, strategies were rewritten to ignore the very person who had held the threads together. The betrayal wasn't sudden, it had been quietly brewed, a poison delivered with impeccable timing. The realization sank in slowly. The very people who claimed to celebrate growth and collaboration were experts in rewriting history to protect their own ambition. Even beyond the office, the consequences were devastating. Personal relationships, once anchored in mutual trust, shifted under the weight of hidden truths. The man who had been relied on most, whose presence had always seemed a stabilizing force, revealed fissures in character no one had suspected. Secrets that had been carefully buried, mismanagement of funds, quiet manipulation of partnerships, even betrayals that cut into family life, came into sharp relief. The contrast between public charm and private scheming was staggering, exposing the fragility of trust and the depth of deception. In the end, what was intended as humiliation, as an attempt to erase contribution and authority, became a mirror reflecting every hidden betrayal. It wasn't just about a job or a title, it was about the quiet exposure of truths long ignored, about seeing who really wielded power and who pretended to care. The delicate balance of trust had shattered, leaving clarity in its wake. Some victories are sweeter when they are reclaimed from those who thought they could erase them. And the reckoning had only just begun. Every triumph celebrated by the startup carried a hidden story, one that no one outside the office walls seemed to notice. The accolades, the glowing press releases, the pats on the back, they were claimed by those who smiled brightest in the spotlight, while the true architects of success remained unseen, quietly shaping every deal, every pitch, every fragile relationship that kept the company afloat. The funding that was celebrated as a collective victory rested on work that had been painstakingly done behind the scenes, often erased in memory once the public eyes turned elsewhere. The quiet brilliance that had held everything together was a secret weapon, invisible yet undeniable. Connections were made and nurtured without fanfare, risks managed with precision, and crises diffused before anyone else could even sense danger. Every meeting where ideas were stolen, every investor call where recognition was subtly redirected, reinforced the illusion that the CEO and a few chosen faces were the driving forces. But beneath the smiles and the public accolades, the truth simmered. The real power rested with the overlooked force no one thought mattered, the one who knew every detail, every weakness, every secret that could unravel the carefully curated image of authority. It wasn't just professional brilliance, it was insight into character, an understanding of ambition, greed, and the fragile ego of those who pretended to lead. While praise was doled out to the wrong people, the secrets accumulated, quiet but potent, waiting for the moment they could shift the balance. Every hidden email, every whispered negotiation, every overlooked contribution became ammunition in a silent war no one else saw coming. The people who thought themselves untouchable were blind to the reality. Success was never theirs alone, and the quiet force they dismissed held the power to topple reputations and rewrite the rules of who truly controlled the company. The irony was sharp. Those who had celebrated victories most loudly were the same ones whose positions were most precarious, their reputations built on borrowed brilliance. One revelation, one exposed truth could dismantle the carefully constructed illusion, and when it happened, the fallout would be undeniable. The overlooked hand had already begun to move. And when it finally struck, no one would question who had truly held the strings all along. The moment that was meant to humiliate lingered like a shadow, sharp and impossible to ignore. A dismissal intended to erase contributions and rewrite history instead became the spark for a quiet, calculated transformation. Fortune has a way of spinning when least expected, turning humiliation into a strange kind of leverage. Opportunities appeared in subtle forms: an investor misstep, a mismanaged partnership, a hidden vulnerability in the very people who had sought to erase influence, all invisible to those blinded by ego and overconfidence. The irony was exquisite. Every sneer, every whispered slight, every public claim of credit became the foundation for a carefully plotted ascent. What was designed as an endpoint, a humiliation, instead became the launch pad for strategies that exposed greed and self-interest in sharp relief. Allies turned out to be enemies in disguise, and rivalries long buried under polite smiles and business formalities resurfaced in unexpected ways. Each revelation shifted the balance, proving that the facade of authority often hides insecurity and desperation. There were moments when it seemed the world would remain indifferent, when the weight of betrayal threatened to crush every effort. But fortune, subtle and precise, began to favor the overlooked. Every investor call that had been ignored, every email that had been dismissed became ammunition, evidence of mismanagement and incompetence. Secrets, carefully gathered and preserved, began to unravel in the hands of someone who knew the truth and waited for the right moment to reveal it. The humiliation that was intended to break spirit instead forged clarity and cunning, turning patience and persistence into weapons no one could anticipate. The ripple effects were undeniable. Partnerships shifted, alliances crumbled, and the carefully constructed illusions of power began to collapse from within. The very people who had celebrated the dismissal, who had assumed control of the narrative, now faced the consequences of their overconfidence. Each revelation landed with precise impact, exposing agendas that had been hidden behind smiles and boardroom pleasantries. Triumph did not arrive through brute force or confrontation. It arrived quietly, strategically, and undeniably, a reminder that fortune favors those who wait, observe, and act when the time is right. And when the final pieces fell into place, the humiliation that had once loomed so large had been transformed into undeniable victory. The truth, long buried beneath layers of charm and deception, began to surface in ways that no one could ignore. Every meeting, every deal, every interaction that had seemed innocent now carried the weight of hidden motives. Greed had been masked as ambition, manipulation cloaked as mentorship, and loyalty twisted into a tool for control. As each secret came to light, the careful veneer of professionalism cracked, revealing a labyrinth of betrayal that had been orchestrated behind closed doors. It was astonishing to see how far some would go to protect appearances. Colleagues, once considered allies, were complicit in lies, knowingly or not, perpetuating the illusion that the CEO's authority and integrity were unquestionable. But the foundations were unstable. Every hidden email, every overlooked memo, every misrepresented success began to surface, exposing the ruthless ambition and calculated deceit that had driven every decision. The revelations were not just professional, they were personal, touching every relationship, every trust that had been assumed unbreakable. The depth of manipulation was staggering. Promises made in private were broken in public, accolades were stolen, credit misappropriated, and reputations quietly eroded while the facade of teamwork and loyalty remained intact. Even the man who had been seen as a stabilizing figure revealed fractures, carefully concealed betrayals that impacted not only the business, but the very fabric of relationships built on trust. The more the layers unraveled, the more it became clear that power had been wielded not to build, but to dominate, control, and erase anyone who threatens the carefully curated narrative. What began as a simple workplace conflict transformed into a reckoning. Secrets long hidden became weapons of truth, illuminating every misstep and every calculated slight. The people who had believed themselves untouchable were now exposed in their full complexity, arrogant, selfish, and dangerously short-sighted. Each revelation not only vindicated the overlooked efforts that had once been ignored, but also demanded accountability from those who had relied on deception to maintain control. The satisfaction was not in revenge alone, but in the clarity it brought. Every exposed secret, every revealed betrayal reshaped the landscape of power and truth. What had once seemed insurmountable became undeniable evidence that deception can only survive so long before it collapses under its own weight. And when the final truth emerged, the illusion of control dissolved completely. If this story kept you hooked, hit that like button and make sure to subscribe so you never miss another twist of betrayal, triumph, and hidden secrets. Turn on notifications because every story here proves that even the smallest overlooked detail can change everything, and you won't want to miss a single revelation.